Hollywood's golden age presented the world with gods and goddesses carved from marble and light. Their names became synonymous with glamour, talent, and untouchable beauty. But beneath the studio publicity photographs and carefully orchestrated premieres existed a hidden economy, one where aspiring stars didn't audition with monologues or screen tests alone. They auditioned in hotel suites after midnight, in private estates behind locked doors, in arrangements that were never written into contracts, but were understood by everyone who wanted to survive. At least 21 of Hollywood's most celebrated leading men navigated this shadowy terrain, trading intimacy for opportunity, silence for survival, and pieces of themselves for a chance to be seen. If you want to see how deep these Hollywood secrets go, subscribe and turn on notifications, because what comes next will change how you see every classic film. James Dean, the rebel angel who paid in the dark. Summer 1951 brought a 20-year-old boy from Indiana to Los Angeles with nothing but a haunting face and dangerous innocence. James Dean possessed no connections, no savings, no scheduled auditions. What he did have was vulnerability, and that made him valuable to the secret talent scouts who operated out of the Chateau Marmont Hotel, a place whispered about as the after-hours casting office. According to a bartender who worked the ground floor, Dean attended private gatherings where young men weren't called by their real names but assigned numbers. Dean was number 6. People gravitated toward his sad eyes and disheveled curls. Most importantly, he asked no questions and never resisted. Rogers Brackett, a theater director from New York, became Dean's first sponsor. The arrangement came with a steep price. Actress Christine White, who lived near Brackett's apartment, recalled hearing Dean crying in the bathroom at 3 in the morning more than once. By dawn, he would appear on set as though nothing had happened. Dean's career trajectory followed a pattern of on-demand visits to upscale parties where he served cocktails and other unlisted services. One television role on CBS came after spending the night with an older investor. Dean accepted because it meant he could stop washing dishes at that Sunset Boulevard diner. A close friend later revealed that Dean had been secretly filmed in a Wilshire Boulevard penthouse while privately entertaining a studio executive. That recording became leverage, ensuring Dean never attempted to break free from the web of control surrounding him. His life ceased to belong to him. What he wore, where he went, who he dated, everything was orchestrated by unnamed handlers. Many believe this surveillance and control contributed to Dean's increasingly withdrawn, cold, and suspicious demeanor. Dean exchanged his body for visibility, but what he received wasn't lasting glory. After just 3 breakthrough performances, he died in a mysterious car crash in 1955, right as his career was beginning to soar. Marlon Brando, the man who slept his way into roles. At a press gathering in 1975, Marlon Brando made a blunt declaration that would later be cited by Vanity Fair in a 2001 special feature. He admitted to sleeping with anyone who could advance his career, male or female, as long as they held power. This candid confession served as living proof of Hollywood's hidden dynamics. During the 1940s, Brando hustled through small New York theater productions. Director George Cukor essentially purchased Brando's services for $300 weekly in exchange for late-night private rehearsals at his Beverly Hills estate. Cukor later telephoned Elia Kazan with a personal recommendation, leading to Brando's legendary casting as Stanley Kowalski in A Streetcar Named Desire. But Brando didn't limit himself to one benefactor. He cultivated relationships with directors, producers, even journalists, anyone capable of moving him closer to the spotlight. A personal diary discovered after his death listed 14 men who had assisted him with both physical intimacy and financial support. Among them was Jack Warner, the Warner Brothers tycoon who once rescued Brando from a sex scandal in 1953, allowing him to proceed with his role in Julius Caesar. Brando's calculated approach to career advancement worked spectacularly. Yet not everyone who followed his path emerged unscathed. Some who entered those same shadowy rooms never came back out into the light. Sal Mineo, the star murdered by a past. He couldn't bury Sal Mineo, the handsome actor who played James Dean's best friend in Rebel Without a Cause, experienced a meteoric rise followed by an even faster descent. Behind the spotlight lay a past he was never permitted to discuss openly. In 1955, at just 16 years old, Mineo received an invitation to a famous producer's private residence for what was called a personal dialogue session. He later confided to a friend that they told him he would secure the part if he could convince them he was compliant enough. That night, Mineo stayed. The following morning, his name appeared on the official audition list for Rebel. Mineo never denied what had occurred. In a 1973 television interview that was cut before broadcast, he stated bluntly that in Hollywood, if you don't satisfy the gatekeepers, they won't remember your name. After Dean's death, Mineo spiraled downward. He was used, discarded, and eventually turned to selling himself as a survival mechanism. According to reports, Mineo maintained exclusive arrangements with 2 directors in Palm Springs, trading sexual favors for minor roles in low-budget films. By the late 60s, Mineo attempted to reclaim his career through directing plays and joining independent art projects. He began speaking about Hollywood's hidden horrors. A week before his murder, Mineo told a reporter that he possessed names, photographs, and recordings, adding that if something happened to him, someone should find that evidence. On February 12, 1976, Sal Mineo was stabbed to death outside his West Hollywood apartment. Police classified it as a robbery, yet his wallet remained untouched, his watch still on his wrist, and his briefcase, rumored to contain explosive evidence, vanished completely. Rock Hudson, the gentleman escort. Behind closed doors. Rock Hudson wasn't merely a Hollywood icon. He functioned as the premium offering at exclusive gatherings that fans never knew existed. As early as the 1950s, when he was still a hopeful contract player at Universal, Hudson appeared on a list of high-potential talent maintained by Henry Wilson, Hollywood's most powerful manager, famous for cultivating actors through unconventional methods. Hudson possessed a chiseled physique, cinematic features, and a deep, seductive voice. But talent wasn't what secured his selection. A leaked studio memo from 1989 contained handwritten notes from one of Wilson's former assistants describing Hudson as obedient, discreet, and always ready to accompany clients whenever Wilson indicated. They called Hudson the perfect companion. He never inquired about who he was meeting or refused assignments. From the Beverly Hills Hotel to Palm Springs Estates, Hudson consistently arrived with a polite smile, poured drinks, made charming conversation, and when necessary, walked into a bedroom without hesitation. A recorded phone conversation between Wilson and producer Ross Hunter, later published in Scotty Bowers' memoir, Full Service, revealed disturbing details about Hudson's availability, and the only restriction being that no photographs could be taken. When Hudson became a sensation through films like Pillow Talk and Magnificent Obsession, he wasn't just the media's darling, but also the most expensive asset at secret fundraising parties hosted by film moguls. Rumors circulated that Hudson's presence at exclusive gatherings helped studios secure millions in underground investments from wealthy backers. After his death, a crumpled note was discovered bearing a haunting message in his handwriting stating he was never allowed to say no. Cary Grant, the perfect gentleman and night spent surviving. The fifth name on this list carries particular weight because Cary Grant was once hailed as the husband every woman dreamed of marrying. But the truth existed on the opposite end of that carefully constructed fantasy. For nearly 2 decades at the start of his career, Grant lived with actor Randolph Scott in an arrangement that magazines curiously described as inseparable companions. At their Malibu Beach mansion, the pair hosted private gatherings for directors, screenwriters, and studio financiers. According to Scotty Bowers, the era's infamous male escort facilitator for the elite, Cary Grant didn't merely entertain at these events. He orchestrated behind-the-scenes exchanges. One cinematographer recounted an occasion when Grant invited 3 directors to his home, then disappeared with them into a locked second-floor room. A week later, Grant landed the leading role in Bringing Up Baby. The pattern continued throughout his career. A leaked memo from Columbia Pictures in 1942 referenced Grant's complete compliance with after-hours studio-arranged activities, including providing support for the studio's key financial partners. Even after becoming a household name, Grant couldn't or wouldn't step away from these arrangements. Confidential magazine once investigated a 1955 incident where Grant was observed leaving the Biltmore Hotel at 2 in the morning alongside an anonymous European backer, just days before signing on for To Catch a Thief with Hitchcock. Perhaps that explains why Grant married 5 times but never truly settled with anyone. Despite tabloid scrutiny, Grant never once responded publicly, understanding that silence was his only protection in a Hollywood full of traps. Clark Gable, the king of Hollywood, once kept by men. Before becoming the dashing Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind, before earning the title King of Hollywood, Clark Gable worked as a young escort serving older men in Oregon. In 1922, at 21 years old, Gable was expelled from his home for dropping out of school and lacking employment. William H. Wright, a prominent gay playwright, took Gable in under the designation of stage apprentice. In reality, Wright provided for Gable's every need: clothes, food, shelter, even spending money, in exchange for the young man's total obedience. A former neighbor of Wright's recalled in a 1978 memoir that every Friday night, Wright hosted guests. Clark would serve drinks with a practiced smile and knew precisely when to slip away into the private room. After Wright's sudden death from a stroke, Gable relocated to Los Angeles, bringing his former benefactor's contact list with him. Internal MGM records indicate Gable was once protected from a scandal involving a male critic by a major director, enabling him to still audition for The Painted Desert. That film became his gateway into Hollywood. Louis B. Mayer, the MGM mogul, once remarked that Gable understood both the price of a tuxedo and the price one pays to wear it on the red carpet. Even at the height of his fame, Gable maintained a complicated relationship with George Cukor, the openly gay director of Gone with the Wind. Rumors suggested Gable influenced Cukor's removal from the project, fearing the director might reveal secrets from their shared past. Gene Kelly, the dance legend and his shadowy footwork. Before achieving stardom, Gene Kelly worked as a dance instructor in Pittsburgh. In 1937, he moved to New York, carrying 2 suitcases and a notebook filled with producer names passed down from former students. One of his first contacts was Charles Weidman, a well-known choreographer who brought Kelly into a private training group that functioned for 6 months as a covert sexual audition pipeline for Broadway producers. Another participant later revealed in Movie Line magazine that they didn't rehearse traditional choreography. Instead, they were evaluated based on their bodies, their obedience, and their flexibility, both on stage and in private settings. Kelly passed this screening process and received a recommendation to director Stanley Donen, who would become both his longtime collaborator and, according to persistent whispers, his secret lover for nearly a decade. Even after achieving fame, Kelly couldn't escape institutional pressure. Studios demanded his participation in exclusive social engagements with investors. A former Variety journalist recalled witnessing Gene Kelly dancing throughout an entire night at a Bel Air mansion, but there were no cameras present, no stage, just 3 powerful men and a contract awaiting signature. In a letter to a close friend written in 1959, Kelly expressed his weariness, noting that they wanted him to dance for them, but nobody ever asked if he was tired, sad, or disgusted with himself. Perhaps that explains why behind the stage lights, Gene Kelly always preferred rooms without mirrors, hallways without footsteps, and silent walks into the darkness. Tony Curtis, the perfect face and the role paid in flesh. Tony Curtis embodied the Hollywood dream with his striking handsomeness, sharp wardrobe, and a smile that commanded every casting room's attention. But beneath that polished surface, Curtis once whispered to a co-star that to secure roles, he had done things that weren't written in any script. In 1948, a young man from the Bronx entered Universal's audition room. Within 5 minutes, an elderly producer assessed him and stated that he could become a star, but first needed to know if he was obedient. That question wasn't casual conversation. According to journalist Robert Hoffler, author of The Man Who Invented Rock Hudson, Curtis once spent an entire week residing in a casting director's private apartment in exchange for a role in Criss Cross, the 1949 film that first captured industry attention. Curtis never denied those nights. In a 1990 interview that was subsequently cut from broadcast, he admitted knowing exactly how to leverage his face, acknowledging it was the most valuable asset he possessed during his youth. By the time he starred in Some Like It Hot, the press celebrated him as the heartthrob of an entire generation. But in his private journal, Curtis once wrote that if people knew what he had done to secure that role, they would never consider him sweet again. The gap between public perception and private reality defined Curtis's entire career, a duality he maintained until his final years. Anthony Perkins, Norman Bates, and the price of every role. Anthony Perkins was once Hollywood's sensitive darling. With dreamy eyes, a tall, slender frame, and a shy, delicate voice, he represented the kind of man every director wanted to reshape according to their own vision. Before becoming Norman Bates in Psycho, Perkins navigated New York's underground scene, surviving through prearranged meetings at the Commodore Hotel. One of his regular clients was Roy Cohn, the era's most powerful attorney, who connected Perkins with media moguls seeking cultured, obedient young men to entertain their guests. An anonymous industry insider told Confidential magazine in 1965 that Perkins possessed a rare quality. He made people feel like they were the only person in the room. In return, they provided him with roles. Alfred Hitchcock himself allegedly secured Perkins from another studio with a contract rumored to include a secret clause requiring Perkins to remain intimately available throughout the production of Psycho. In unpublished letters to an ex-boyfriend revealed in 2007, Perkins wrote that he wasn't afraid to die for a role. He was afraid people would discover how he had to die slowly, piece by piece, to earn it. After Psycho, Perkins became typecast not merely on screen, but in life. In 1972, he told a psychologist that he no longer felt like himself, stating he had become a deal, a gift that was perpetually traded from one handler to another. Dennis Hopper, the rebel who sold himself to stay in the game. Dennis Hopper embodied New Hollywood's wild spirit, a rebel draped in dust and defiance. But even he once confessed to selling his soul for a supporting role and one night in Beverly Hills. In the mid-1960s, Hopper hit rock bottom, blacklisted from major projects due to his reputation for violence, insubordination, and drug use. One evening, he received an invitation to a private casting party at a Mulholland Drive mansion where men like him could trade their bodies for a chance to return to the screen. According to director Nicholas Ray's memoir, Hopper willingly serviced an older financier throughout an entire night in exchange for a small role in The Sons of Katie Elder, the 1965 film that placed him back on Hollywood's radar. Hopper's ex-girlfriend, actress Brooke Hayward, once observed that Dennis would endure anything, even complete humiliation, if it meant stepping in front of a camera again. The cost extended beyond single transactions. In a 1983 Rolling Stone interview, Hopper admitted that he used to consider himself rebellious, but before that transformation, he had been a good boy who served rich men just to pursue what he loved. Hopper's willingness to sacrifice dignity for opportunity raises profound questions about where the line exists in these exchanges, and whether some people don't sell themselves once, but rather in fragments, night after night, until nothing authentic remains. Rudolph Valentino, the original Latin lover and knight sold for survival. Rudolph Valentino became Hollywood's first true heartthrob, adored nationwide as the Latin lover. But long before women chased him through the streets, Valentino had to serve men merely to survive. According to Emily Leiter's 2003 biography, Valentino worked as a waiter in New York before being terminated for becoming too friendly with male clients. He was subsequently introduced to a secret venue called Club Mikey, where wealthy men could rent attractive young men for the evening at $50 per visit. An old acquaintance told the Brooklyn Eagle that Valentino initially resisted, but when someone threatened to report his illegal residency status to authorities, Valentino agreed. Every week thereafter, someone came to escort him away for the night. One of those clients, producer Norman Cary, eventually brought Valentino to California and helped secure him a role in The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse in 1921, the film that transformed him into a star. But the question remains, at what cost did that stardom come? In a handwritten note discovered after his death, Valentino wrote a haunting observation about how the world called him their lover. Yet during those first nights, nobody kissed him at all. He wasn't being loved, he was being consumed. Valentino's brief life and early death at 31 left many questions unanswered about the full extent of what he endured to achieve fame. Tyrone Power, beauty that never came free. In Hollywood, Tyrone Power became the face of American cinema throughout the 1940s. Women adored him, men envied him. But what audiences never knew was that Power learned early that beauty in Hollywood isn't a gift. It functions as currency. In 1936, before signing with 20th Century Fox, Power received an invitation to vacation in Palm Springs with an older producer, later named in FBI files for hosting casting parties disguised as private retreats. A staff member told journalist William Mann that Power was asked to model swimwear, then asked to demonstrate obedience. The following morning, he secured a 5-year contract. The transactions didn't stop there. For years, Power's calendar was controlled by Hollywood elites who sponsored his appearances when he wasn't filming. His presence at venues like the Brown Derby nightclub always came accompanied by whispers that he was settling debts with charm rather than currency. His close friend, actor Cesar Romero, once observed that Tyrone understood that to maintain his position, he had to protect the carefully constructed image, even if the cost meant never being allowed to speak the truth about who he really was or what he had endured. The facade Power maintained throughout his career required constant vigilance and the suppression of any authentic self-expression that might threaten his marketability. Montgomery Clift, the sorrowful eyes of a man who once sold his body. Montgomery Clift never smiled for extended periods in front of the camera. His gaze perpetually carried a quiet sadness, as if it didn't fully belong to this world. That disconnection made sense because Hollywood was a place where he once sold himself to secure a supporting role. According to diary entries left by Elizabeth Taylor, Clift once confided that in his youth, a friend introduced him to a stage director with the explicit purpose of trading intimacy for a theatrical part. When Taylor asked if he regretted that decision, Clift simply answered no, but added that every time he remembered those nights, he felt like a part of him died. In 1945, before his name carried any recognition, Clift agreed to a private audition at a Bel Air mansion where acclaimed director Joshua Logan was seeking a fresh face. After the session concluded, Clift remained at the residence for 3 days. An elderly housemaid recalled in the biography Clift the untold story that he cried frequently during that period, but when he departed, he carried a signed contract. Even after fame arrived, Clift deflected every inquiry about how his career began. When asked by Variety about his origins in the industry, he answered cryptically that he started in theater and in a few rooms where nobody was watching. He lived in profound loneliness, battled alcohol addiction, and died with a crooked smile, taking countless secrets to his grave. Tab Hunter. The teen idol and the relationships no one could know. During the 1950s, nobody outshone Tab Hunter's golden glow. The bright smile, the chiseled frame, the all-American boy persona. Hunter represented the ideal that entire generations of young women fantasized about marrying. But behind that idle facade existed a truth Hunter had to bury for half his lifetime. In 1950, at just 19 years old, Hunter was arrested at a gay gathering in Long Beach, a scandal that nearly destroyed his career before it began. But a powerful unnamed producer intervened, securing his release not with money, but with an exclusive 5-year contract that bound Hunter to more than just film obligations. When asked about the scandal in later years, Hunter would only offer a faint smile and state that he didn't lose anything. He just had to spend certain nights with someone he couldn't refuse. Throughout his golden years, Hunter was forced into fabricated romance contracts with young actresses including Natalie Wood and Debbie Reynolds, all designed to conceal his authentic relationships and maintain his marketable image. Later in his memoir, Hunter wrote candidly that he wasn't selected for his acting ability. He was chosen because he was willing to remain quiet and beautiful in precisely the way Hollywood required. The double life Hunter maintained for decades took an immense psychological toll, forcing him to live as a stranger to himself in exchange for continued employment. Richard Chamberlain, the TV doctor, and his double life. As Dr. Kildare in NBC's 1961 hit series, Richard Chamberlain became the dreamboat of millions of viewers. But behind the scenes, he lived in perpetual fear. Fear of exposure, fear of losing everything if just one compromising photograph leaked to the press. A former assistant told Hollywood Insider that Chamberlain never departed the studio with his romantic partner. All meetings occurred at his private apartment, where the windows remained perpetually shut, the curtains always drawn, the telephone always unplugged. Chamberlain faced pressure to attend after-hours auditions held past midnight in Beverly Hills, where directors, producers, even journalists evaluated candidates, not on performance ability, but on physical compliance and willingness. On one occasion, he was required to privately engage with a network executive before a new role received final approval. When a male co-star once suggested they go public with their relationship, Chamberlain coldly replied by asking if the co-star would be able to support him financially if that revelation cost him his career. He wore the mask of the perfect gentleman for 40 years, maintaining the illusion through carefully staged public appearances and relationships. Only after retiring from the spotlight did he finally dare to admit the truth about his life. But there were others who never even had the luxury of contemplating when they might remove their masks. Troy Donahue, the teen heartthrob and midnight casting parties. With golden hair and effortless surfer charm, Troy Donahue became the national heartthrob of the 1960s. But when the studio lights were extinguished each evening, he didn't return home. Instead, he appeared at invitation-only gatherings where casting didn't occur in front of cameras but behind locked doors. At one such event in 1958 at a Mulholland Drive estate, Donahue was summoned into a private room where director Jack Warner and 2 wealthy backers waited. A server present at the gathering recalled that Donahue emerged 30 minutes later, his face pale as a sheet. He hadn't been asked to perform scenes, just to let them examine what he looked like without clothing. Following that night, he was offered a 7-year contract with Warner Brothers that would define his career. From that point forward, every appearance Donahue made came with an unspoken price. In a leaked journal entry, he wrote that each time he appeared on screen, he had to erase a portion of himself. After a few years, nothing authentic remained except the manufactured image they had created. Donahue spiraled into addiction, lost all his wealth, and died in solitude in 2001, largely forgotten by the industry that had once consumed him. At least Donahue experienced his moment of fame, however fleeting. Some weren't even granted that consolation. Van Johnson, the boy next door, who traded his body for rent. Van Johnson became MGM's signature nice guy next door throughout the 1940s, representing wholesome American values in film after film. But in reality, Johnson once slept on warehouse floors and borrowed money just to afford food. When director George Cukor happened to notice him at a cheap diner on Melrose Avenue, he made a statement that brought tears to Johnson's eyes, telling him he didn't need acting ability. He just needed to behave according to instructions. That same night, Johnson received an invitation to Cukor's estate. They conducted their audition in the bedroom. The following morning, Johnson departed with confirmation for an actual screen test and enough rent money to last 3 months. Later, during a drinking session with a friend, Johnson confided that he wasn't proud of what he had done, but he couldn't bear the thought of returning to sleeping on park benches. He explained that in Hollywood, people don't inquire about your identity or your dreams. They simply ask if you will comply with their requirements. The boy next door image Johnson projected on screen masked the reality of how he had purchased his entry into the industry, a secret he carried throughout his career while smiling for cameras and charming audiences who never suspected the truth. George Maharis, the TV hero undone by one headline. George Maharis became the golden face of early 1960s television through his role as Buzz Murdoch in Route 66. Handsome, rugged, undeniably masculine, Maharis captivated female viewers and inspired jealousy among men. But one November night in 1967, his carefully constructed image collapsed with a single, devastating headline in the Los Angeles Times announcing that a television actor had been arrested in a public restroom for indecent conduct. The story received limited coverage, but court records revealed that Maharis had been caught in an intimate exchange with an undercover LAPD officer in the restroom of the Westwood Hotel. The scandal didn't merely raise questions about his sexuality, it prompted the studios to abandon him virtually overnight. A former director who had worked with Maharis once stated that everyone in the industry knew from the beginning that he wasn't cast for his acting talent. He was beautiful and he was obedient, and that combination held more value than any dramatic skill. Following the scandal, Maharis vanished from television screens. He lived reclusively for the remainder of his life, avoided all interview requests, and never spoke publicly about that night again. His career serves as a stark reminder that the same system that elevated stars through hidden transactions could just as quickly destroy them when those secrets became public knowledge. John Gavin, the clean-cut face. Behind Dirty Encounters, John Gavin earned recognition as one of Hollywood's cleanest faces during the late 1950s. With perfect features, military bearing, and abundant charm, he became the default choice for heroes, military officers, and aristocrats. But what audiences never witnessed was the extensive list of strangers Gavin met during hours outside the studio. A former Universal Studios limousine driver revealed in a quietly released 1984 memoir that Gavin was frequently transported to a Santa Monica apartment at midnight where men in formal attire awaited his arrival. No names were exchanged, no questions asked. After approximately an hour, he would emerge blank-faced and simply instruct the driver to take him home, adding that he needed a shower. In return for these nocturnal meetings, Gavin secured roles before scripts had even been completed. No auditions were required, no questions posed about his suitability. A Universal executive once admitted that Gavin represented the perfect mask for the corruption they were concealing behind the industry's glamorous facade. Gavin survived his Hollywood experience and eventually transitioned to a diplomatic career. But not every star who participated in this system escaped with their life intact. Some, like the next man on this list, died in the very environment they had once sold themselves to obtain. Ramon Novarro, the silent film legend, who died on a stranger's bed. On October 31, 1968, police discovered Ramon Novarro deceased in his Laurel Canyon residence. His throat had been strangled with a telephone cord, his mouth stuffed with tissue, dried blood covering the surrounding area. His killers were identified as Paul and Tom Ferguson, two young male escorts he had contacted that evening. The brothers believed Novarro was concealing money somewhere in the house. But the case acquired darker dimensions when reporters uncovered a client list documenting the numerous individuals Novarro had entertained from the 1930s through the 1950s. Directors, politicians, and A-list stars whose reputations depended on secrecy. One person confessed on the witness stand to meeting Novarro at age 17, recounting how Novarro told him to simply behave and promised to secure him a role in film. That promise was fulfilled. Novarro survived for decades by selling himself under various pseudonyms, operating within Hollywood's shadow economy. But even as a legendary figure from cinema's earliest days, he died alone and disgraced, just another body that nobody wanted to publicly acknowledge or claim. His brutal murder highlighted the dangers inherent in the system that had sustained his career. A system where transactions happened in darkness and where the participants remained perpetually vulnerable to violence and exploitation. Farley Granger, the innocent boy and his lover in the dark. Farley Granger rose to prominence through Hitchcock's Rope in 1948, charming audiences with soft features, dreamy eyes, and gentle presence. But beneath that delicate exterior existed a life dominated by fear and consuming desire. In 1950, Granger entered an all-encompassing relationship with screenwriter Arthur Lawrence, a man who exerted control over every aspect of his career trajectory. In his memoir, Include Me Out, Granger admitted that Arthur taught him how to love, how to pretend, and how to submit when necessary to maintain a role. The relationship endured for over 15 years, but nobody in the industry dared acknowledge it publicly. Each time Granger secured a new part, whispers followed questioning who he had slept with that particular week. A production assistant was once terminated merely for joking about the subject on the set of Strangers on a Train. Granger never confirmed or denied the rumors surrounding his career advancement. In one of his final interviews, he reflected that he had loved and been used, but held no regrets because he understood that in Hollywood's ecosystem, if you don't permit them access to your body, they will never grant you access to the spotlight. His candor in later years provided rare insight into the psychological calculations that so many actors made during Hollywood's golden age. Scotty Bowers, the secret broker of classic Hollywood. If anyone possessed comprehensive knowledge of who slept with whom in classic Hollywood, it was Scotty Bowers. A former Marine, Bowers became the unofficial pleasure coordinator for virtually the entire film industry. Operating from a humble gas station on Hollywood Boulevard beginning in 1946, Bowers wasn't merely pumping gasoline. He was facilitating introductions between young men and VIP clients. Many of these young men were aspiring actors, unknown models, or recently discharged servicemen seeking any avenue into the entertainment business. In his memoir, Full Service, published in 2012, Bowers recalled arranging encounters for Rock Hudson, Cary Grant, and Spencer Tracy, among countless others. He described himself as simply the middleman in transactions that everyone involved understood were necessary for career advancement. Bowers claimed to have orchestrated over 1,000 encounters across 3 decades, personally participating in more than a third of them. He explained that clients came to him because they had no alternative options. They needed roles, they needed rent money, they needed to survive in an expensive city that offered limited opportunities for those without connections. Remarkably, Bowers was never sued, never captured on recording, and never faced criminal charges despite the scope of his operation. When he died in 2019, he left behind a vault containing hundreds of names, iconic figures who had once submitted to intimate transactions just to earn their chance under Hollywood spotlights. The glittering facade of Hollywood's golden age concealed a brutal economy where bodies became bargaining chips and silence was survival. These 21 men navigated an industry that simultaneously worshipped and exploited them, granting fame while extracting pieces of their humanity in return. Their stories reveal three undeniable truths. First, that the power structures governing Hollywood's earliest decades operated through coercion masked as opportunity. Second, that the psychological cost of these transactions extended far beyond individual encounters, shaping entire lives lived in fear and secrecy. Third, that many of these dynamics never truly disappeared. They simply evolved, becoming more sophisticated and harder to trace. The question remains whether audiences can reconcile the art they love with the suffering that produced it. These men gave everything to become the icons preserved on film. What they received in exchange was far more complicated than simple fame. If these hidden histories matter to you, share this video and subscribe, because the truth about old Hollywood deserves to be remembered.